Today on Soul Work for Moms. Lindsay Dewald is a wife, mother of 2 young girls, and a small business owner in Cincinnati, Ohio. She and her husband started the City Flea, a curated urban flea market that runs May through December, and are just about to wrap up their 6th year of business. Together, they are passionate about their community, small business, Montessori education, and design. They just recently built a home in the historic neighborhood of Over-The-Rhine, where Lindsay spends her days making home and mothering. Today, you'll hear Lindsay talk about how she got into the Montessori lifestyle, how her experience of mothering was turned upside down after the birth of her second child, as well as the joys and realities of city living. You are listening to the Soul Work for Moms podcast. I'm Michelle Duncan-Wilson. Soul Work for Moms exists to support your personal and spiritual growth through mothering. Welcome to the show. Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really, really thrilled to chat with you today. You have 2 beautiful little girls that we get to see on Instagram, and you've got this wonderful business that you started with your husband here in Cincinnati, which we will talk about all of that for sure. But I really want to start with getting a picture of what childhood was like for you.
Sure. Yeah, I had a great childhood. I grew up, kind of in the traditional suburban home on the west side of Cincinnati. Went to a Catholic grade school. It's actually kind of interesting though, because all my memories of childhood are very happy and stable, even though while growing up, when I'm trying to think if it was 6 or 7, my parents divorced. And I can remember, initially that being shocking as a small child, that my dad was not going to live in our home with us anymore. But both my mom and dad just did an incredible job of making my brother and I feel secure and loved through all of it. So I feel like there could have been moments throughout childhood that could have really rocked my brother and I.
Yeah.
But it's just been, in hindsight as an adult, when I think of it, a testament to how wonderful my parents were. It was so evident that how much my brother and I were loved from both of them. And so I think, we lived with my mom full time, and we were with my dad, on weekends and one night a week and that kind of thing. But my dad, even though we weren't with him every day, we talked on the phone every day. He never missed a sporting event or a birthday or an activity or anything like that. So I think just them both being there consistently, helped us just feel secure, and that everything is still fine in our lives and that kind of thing.
Cool. So happy childhood is
yes,
how you would describe it. Good.
I would. Yeah.
And then that leads to the next question of, did you always know that you wanted to be a mother?
I did. But I didn't have like a strong, I don't know if this is true of most children, at least I would imagine so, but I don't know. I didn't have like a strong desire until like late in college. It was something that I always assumed I would do. I assume I'll be a mom one day, but I didn't really give it much thought until I was old enough to think about what my life might look like. And that's when my desire sometime in college became really strong.
Was that desire before you met your husband? Because some people I know, they don't get the desire until they're actually already married, and then they're like, oh, what next? So it sounds like you had that kind of before.
I did. Yeah, I had it before. I've always loved kids, and I know that doesn't mean you will automatically become a mother.
Right.
But I've always worked with kids, been around kids, just loved kids. And so, that soul searching kind of time in college where you're trying to figure out what you want to do, what you're going to, do when you graduate and what do you want to be and all that kind of stuff. It was just kind of always in my plan. However, I did think at that time that I wanted to have some like really sexy career in like public relations and do all these things and have kids, and they would just, go to daycare or have it, whatever, be out of my care for most of the day. And that changed when I started dating my husband. That changed.
You're a Montessori teacher. That's what you're trained in. So sounds like that's not what you started in college
It's not. So I actually have a degree in marketing.
Okay.
But so when I graduated from college, I moved to Los Angeles and I worked in entertainment PR. I worked for NBC for a short stint. And hated it. I just hated it.
What did you hate about it?
Oh gosh, all of it. No, I didn't, it felt so meaningless to me. There was just a lot of catering to the celebrity type of person. And it was belittling, just all of these things that at the end of each day made me every day just think this is not meaningful work. This is so silly. And kind of through that time, when I initially moved to Los Angeles, I had a hard time getting a job right away. So my fallback always was just, I'll do something with kids. So I worked kind of at this enrichment center and did a summer camp as a camp counselor and taught like little extra classes here and there for kids at this enrichment center. And it's, in hindsight, it was not my fallback. It was actually what I was meant to be doing. But in my mind at the time, it was always I'll just do something with kids. That makes me happy. It's stress-free for me. It's what I'm good at it. And, all that stuff. So, after just being miserable at this job in Los Angeles, I decided it was just time to not, to just drop the whole entertainment dream and pursue a full-time teaching career. And so that's what I did.
And did you do that in LA or did you move?
So Nick and I were together, but he lived here. He was finishing his master's degree in architecture from DAP. So he was here and I was there, and we were both kind of like at a crossroads of just, he was finishing up school. I wanted to leave LA. So together we decided that we wanted to move to New York City and just try that whole lifestyle out. So that's when I began teaching full time.
That's a perfect segue because you have a really popular Instagram feed. And when looking through your photos, it's really quickly observed that you are all about Montessori home. And so you were a Montessori teacher, but did you immediately know that you wanted to go into Montessori, or did you just kind of find that through deciding you wanted to be a teacher? I kind of knew when I was in college. I worked as like an after school teacher at a Montessori school. That was like sheer coincidence. I wasn't pursuing something in Montessori, just something with kids. But I think that's kind of where my eyes were first open to the whole philosophy. Well, that's actually not true. I went to a Montessori school when I was in preschool and kindergarten. Okay.
So I guess that's where my eyes were open to it, but
from
I didn't,
adult's perspective.
Yes, exactly. And so when we decided to move to New York, I was looking into all different types of schools, but I was really interested in finding an assistant teaching job at a Montessori school. And so at the time, I didn't have my Montessori training. So I was able to become an assistant teacher at a private Montessori school in Tribeca. And then while I was working there, I was able to do my training.
So we haven't even gotten to you actually having your children yet. But I have to ask you this question. Yes. I'm always curious about thoughts about parenting while you're a teacher. So I want to hear any perspective that you have before you had children as a Montessori teacher, good, bad, all of it. Like, what's the inside scoop? Was there anything that when kids would come in, you think, oh my gosh, if only these parents would?
Oh my gosh, for sure. And now having children, I'm like, oh my God, what in the world was I thinking?
Oh, okay. Do you remember any of those things?
Just silly things that like we all go through, I'm sure, as parents, where the kid's sobbing at the door because they don't want their mom to leave. As a childless teacher, in my mind, he'll be fine. Just get out the door. He'll be fine. Just leave. Well, now, when your child is screaming and reaching for you, it's just a whole other, it's absolutely heart-wrenching. And you just can't get that type of thing until you have a child.
Yeah. It's so like that with, any topic, name it, and then the before and after perspective. Yeah. And
silly things where it's like, we would send home a red folder with all the information in it, and then parents would like not follow the directions. Yeah. Well, yeah, because home life is crazy when you have little children. Like, I get that now.
Oh, that makes me laugh. That's great.
So, just things like that. And I think too, like even things where of course it was my job to teach these kids certain things by certain milestones and all that kind of thing. But now in hindsight too, I'm like, you know what? If my kid's happy and healthy and just thriving, like in their environment, I don't really care if they can do addition or subtraction. They're 3 or 4. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think as a teacher, of course, because I think you want to impress their parents, and it's a mark kind of for you. Like, am I doing my job? Do these kids know what I'm supposed to be teaching them?
That's such a great perspective, because I have to be honest, I've never thought about that. I think I've been so worried about what the teachers are thinking about me as a parent. Like, am I doing the right thing? I had never even thought that, wow, the teacher is also thinking, what is the parent thinking about me and my ability? Wow. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it safe to say that you have a Montessori home?
Yes.
And then what does that mean? Because, my children actually are in Montessori school, and I know the very basics. So then how would you describe a Montessori home to someone?
I think, to be honest, probably a lot of people have a Montessori type of like lifestyle in their home and just don't realize it. Because for me, especially now my children are so little, 3.5 and 9 months, but the biggest things, especially at this age, are just allowing them to have access to a lot of the things in your home and encouraging them to be independent and just members of the family who contribute. So I always tell parents who are interested in incorporating more in the home or even just learning more about Montessori, the best place to start is the kitchen. And that can be things like washing the dishes, helping prepare meals. My daughter has been cracking eggs and cutting vegetables since she was 2. And I think people are often like, oh, she can't do that.
Yeah.
But if you just let them try, they can. And I think that's really surprising to people.
Yeah.
And 2, you have to be a little bit open to, your kids are going to make messes when they're young.
Just what I was thinking, like having the time when you make dinner to be able to break. Isn't there a saying like you got to crack a few eggs or something. I forget what that saying is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But what I have found is like, she's so, like yesterday, she just went in the refrigerator and got herself a bowl of cereal totally by herself. And I don't know if that's typical of a 3-year-old or not, but I feel like because I've kind of allowed her to have a lot of independence in the kitchen, she's pretty self-sufficient in there, which is really great, especially if you have multiple children.
Right,
to just kind of have, to not needing to be able to wait on her hand and foot, essentially. I also have a cabinet in our kitchen that's really low, so they can open the cabinet by themselves, and it has all their cups, all their bowls, all their utensils, napkins, a little pitcher for water, like everything they need in the kitchen is at their level. So that's kind of a good Montessori tip, is that Maria Montessori, who founded the philosophy, in every room of like their bedroom, their playroom, the kitchen kind of is at their level. So they don't need to reach up for it. They have access to everything that they need. So
yeah, and that's got to do so much for their confidence, right? To be able to think, I'm thirsty, I'm going to go get a drink of water, not mommy, please, can I get a drink of water?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's like huge just in the philosophy, is just that sense of accomplishment and independence, and how that does foster such great, self-confidence. So I think that's great.
Cool. And so you mentioned you've got 2 littles. What are their names?
Ruthie, she's 3.5, and Ren. She's 9 months. Yeah.
Okay. So I was just asking this question to a group of women a couple months ago, but what's been the biggest surprise for you since becoming a mom? And that could be just before Ruthie or after the birth of your 9-month-old. What really took you by surprise?
So when I had Ruthie, I felt, if I'm being honest, I felt a little bit guilty because it felt really easy to me. She was a pretty easy baby. I didn't have any, I didn't have any issues after the fact. My hormones were fine. I didn't go through any postpartum issues. Mm-hmm. And I would hear from these other new moms who were just like really struggling. And I felt I just couldn't relate to it. And I really did have this weird guilt around it.
Like you should be struggling and you weren't?
I should be struggling. Like, why is this not hard for me, but it's hard for others?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It was weird. I mean, I didn't wrestle with it too hard because I was happy and so I wasn't, going to dwell on why is this not harder? Like I was just kind of trying to be like, wow, I don't know. I don't get it. But then I had Ren, and it just like rocked my world. And I think part of it too is that I had the expectation that it would be like when I had Ruthie.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
And even more so, I thought I think this might even be easier because in my mind, I was like, oh, surely the second baby will just be really laid back. She'll,
right. I've done this before.
Yeah, I've done it before. She'll have to be in a bassinet more than Ruthie was because I'll be needing to be doing stuff with Ruthie. Well, that was just not the case. She's just a totally different baby, which is interesting because night 1 in the hospital, this has been her personality, which kind of helps because then I'm like, oh, okay, so I didn't do this to you. I didn't create all these terrible, sleeping habits and you needing to be in my arms all the time. But it's just funny how different their temperaments have been from the moment they were born. And I was really around 6 months when Ren was about 6 months, I was kind of at my breaking point. Like, something has to change. I am extremely sleep deprived, not myself. It was just hard. It was hard. And then I just remember being like, I totally get it now. I feel like I kind of feel like I got like my badge of motherhood at that point because it was so hard.
Yeah, there's that guilt that you were hoping for, right?
I know. I'm like, why did I want this? What in the world?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I really can so relate with that. And I'll just share a quick little story that everyone that listens knows. I have a 17-year-old and so I had a lot of guilt because I had her when I was 18 and totally different experience of motherhood through that. And so then I had my second child and I thought, oh, I'm going to do it, quote, the right way, right? Like as if I didn't do it the right way the first time. And I wore myself out. And also I had a baby like that, like from day one, just never sleeping. And of course I internalized all of it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't do it the right way. This is not working. I'm so terrible. And I mean, it was like that for several years until we finally had our third child 5 years later. And I had like the opposite effect. It was after having the third one is what I would, I hate to label, but we'll just call him like the easy baby, just that like sleeping, no problem. And for me, it was like this sense of relief of like, oh, okay, if this one's easy and I'm doing everything the same way, then it wasn't like my fault. It wasn't because of something that I wasn't doing that made my middle child harder. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Totally.
I was just walking around feeling like I'm terrible. I'm a terrible mom. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but this kid is just never happy and he's never sleeping and he's just always mad. And, we can talk a lot about that in other episodes, but.
And that's interesting too, how you said, you did the same things and yours were opposite, a hard one in the middle. And then I feel the same way, but opposite. Like I'm doing the same things with Ruthie. Why is she just, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So funny.
And so you said you hit your breaking point at 6 months. So like, what did that look like? Has it gotten better or?
It has. Oh, yes, it has. It's gotten a lot better. So I think for me, it was like, oh my God, I need to sleep train this child and I don't want to do it. I don't want to do this whole, I researched, as all, I think moms with kids, you just get on the internet. What do they say about all these different crazy methods of sleep training? But she wouldn't nap or sleep at night. So I was like, this is crazy. I need her to sleep. So, so I started sleep training her at 6 months, which involved a lot of crying from her and me. And thankfully a really, really, really wonderful husband who left me notes in the morning that, said, you can do it. You're strong. You're a wonderful mother. You're patient. And I still have that stuck on my refrigerator.
That's awesome.
So we did that and she started napping, which was huge just to kind of she's napping right now actually, which is really wonderful. Just to kind of get that break throughout the day that I so needed so I could spend a little bit of time with Ruthie. So that's really helped. I mean, she's still a terrible sleeper at night, but I've kind of just surrendered to the fact that she's just not a great sleeper. And that was kind of part of the other thing was I would look at these friends who's like, they lay their babies down wide awake at 7:00 and then they don't hear from them till 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And like, I just dwelled on the fact that why doesn't my baby do that? Like, why does her baby do that? And why doesn't mine? And I just dwelled on it for 6 solid months. And then I finally just kind of was like, you know what? My baby doesn't do that. And that's okay. She's wonderful. She's happy. She just wants to be next to me at night. So we've just we worked out a little, situation that works for us. And we're in a much better place now.
I hear two things in that. I hear one, that you surrendered to what is, that you don't have that baby that sleeps from 7 to 7. And you also made it work for you. So you hit that breaking point and you weren't just surrendering in a way of like, well, I guess I'm just never going to get any time ever. You said, no, I'm going to sleep train. I need to do this. And then with her getting naps, it sounds like got you to a place of, oh, I can breathe. I feel a little bit of space. And that helps you to surrender that you have a child that likes to sleep next to you every night. Right. Is that right?
Yeah. And like, when I think about it, I'm almost happier that she naps a couple times a day as opposed to is up all day long and then sleeps just okay. Because I feel like those breaks during the day are so important. Because at night, I mean, yes, you want to be asleep, but I can still like, I don't need to tend to anybody else. Ruthie doesn't need me at night. She's sound asleep. My husband's asleep, you know, for the most part. He's up sometimes with me too, but I can be laying down with her. I don't have to be doing things with her on my hip while I'm trying to do other things around the house. And so for me, I'm her napping and me, you know, training her to nap has at least given me the break that I think was so just desperate for.
During all of this, you and your husband started the City Flea, which is a curated urban flea market downtown in Cincinnati. And so through all of this, you're still running your business, right?
Yeah, we are. And now I will say the good thing, we started it before we had children. Uh-huh. So we kind of were able to work out, like, you know, I think when you're doing anything, you need to know like what systems work, all that kind of stuff. And so we had like 3 years to kind of work all that out. So now it doesn't, you know, run itself by any means, but it's a lot smoother than it was, I think, when you're launching anything. Mm-hmm. We're about to finish our 6th year of business. Yeah, it's been great.
And so now you feel like you're in a good place with that. I'm curious, when you had your first child, sounds like you got the kinks worked out before you had her, but do you remember having like a shock or any change happen?
Yeah. Well, yeah. When I had Ruthie, I was still teaching and we had the business. So it was a lot at that time. I worked for a really wonderful school that allowed me to work part-time. So I kind of, you know, job shared with another teacher. So I was teaching 2 full days a week and then trying to also do the business. And then I also had Ruthie. So those around the 3rd year, it got to be kind of overwhelming just because I felt like I had too many things on my plate and I wasn't really excelling at any of them because I was thinking about them all kind of at the same time. And that bothered me. So I knew that I needed to let go of something. And that for me at the time was teaching because I wanted to be home full time with Ruthie at the time. Which then opened up space for me to really focus on doing City Flea stuff. And both of Nick and I's families are both in town. So, you know, we have grandparent babysitters who are always willing and able to watch our kids. So it's been just so nice each week. My mom usually comes on Tuesdays actually. And then I can have a few hours to go to a coffee shop or to even work from home, but just where I don't have to be the sole, caregiver for a few hours. So it's really been a good balance, I think, of letting go of one thing so that I can really focus on the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Having parents in town definitely is so helpful. And yes. I really encourage everyone that I know a lot of people don't have parents in town or parents even still alive to help out. And, if you can hire someone, great. But a lot of people, the finances are tight. So even if it's just trading, my sister and I, we trade babysitting hours. And I think just be creative, do whatever it is that you have to do. But even just a couple hours a week, that is, it gives space, so much space to just be able to breathe.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Okay. And then City Flea, which takes place in Cincinnati, is a town that you and your husband both have a lot of love for. You can tell anyone, I think, that knows you. So much, in fact, that you guys just built your city house in Over-the-Rhine. Congratulations. If you follow Lindsay on Instagram, you can see pictures of her beautiful house. Tell us just a little bit about that. What led you guys to move down? For those of you that aren't in Cincinnati listening, Over-the-Rhine is a historic district in the middle of downtown Cincinnati. And over the past few years, it's really experienced this kind of beautiful growth and energy. And well, I'll let you tell a little more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So my husband is an architect. And so I think he's kind of always had this dream to build his family a home. And so the idea kind of to do it in Over-the-Rhine kind of came into our minds. It's been now like 2 years ago. With that said, my husband works in Over-the-Rhine and has always loved this neighborhood, even when it was like just really rough and gritty. He loved it. He kind of loves that like grit of a urban environment. Mm-hmm. He's just a city guy. And so he works in this neighborhood. So he was here every day in and day out. When we would, go, to a restaurant, get a drink, grab coffee, we were always in this neighborhood. Going to the parks, there's just a lot to do here. And we found ourselves just always here. So, we really sat down about 2 years ago and just started talking about it. Is this something that we would want to do? Where would we even build a house? Do people build new houses in an old historic neighborhood like this? We didn't want to knock down a beautiful old historic building. So we were like, well, we would have to find a vacant lot. Mm. How hard is that going to be? Impossible. In our minds, we were like, it's going to be impossible. But one day we were taking a walk around Over-the-Rhine, and there was, sure enough, just a vacant lot in the middle of this extremely charming tree-lined one-way street. Wow. And I kind of think it almost didn't even cross our minds, because we were both like, surely that wouldn't even be an option. Like, somebody must own that. Somebody must have, plans for that space. So we just kind of dug around, did a little bit of research, and we found out that, so it's just like serendipitous. His company actually owned the lot. And so, our minds were blown, and,
it was meant to be. It was waiting for you.
Exactly. I think so. And so he talked to his bosses and said, would this even be an option for us to purchase this? And they said, yeah, we'll do the exact same, math that we would do for anybody. Mm-hmm. And if it works for you guys, then yes, you could certainly buy it. So that's what we did.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was just a rectangular lot just tucked amidst these other city buildings. We didn't have to tear anything down. And then we started the designing, and I think it was, really, really fun. Overwhelming and a little bit stressful, but really fun for Nick, especially, I think, to design this house for us. So it took a long, but we got here, and we're here sitting inside of it right now.
And if you aren't already following Lindsay on Instagram, it's Our City House, and you can see just so many pictures of her beautiful home. It's great.
Thank you. Thanks.
And so I want to hear about, how long have you been there?
Just a month. Yeah. We moved in the beginning of October.
It's brand new to you, but I want to hear about city life so far with a family, because, I've never seriously thought about living in a city, but anytime I do, I automatically think how are the kids going to learn how to ride a bike? And, all the things that I'm sure you and Nick thought about. So what's it been like so far?
So to be honest, it took me a little bit of convincing Because we had children when we started, or we had a child, we had Ruthie, because I knew that this was an extreme. Mm-hmm. I knew that I kind of wanted to do it, but I also was like really feeling a pull to live on some really charming street that was filled with families and kids, where you could leave your door unlocked, and, that whole kind of vibe was really appealing to me too. So, it took a lot of discernment about whether this was right for us. Mm. And, through a lot of conversations with Nick and with our friends and our family, I just kind of decided, you know what, as a spouse, I think I want to do this and commit to it, because I want to see Nick's dream come true. Mm-hmm. And so when I made that decision, then I stopped questioning it. But I went back and forth for months. So just finally saying to him and to our friends and family, like, yes, we're doing it, helped me stay kind of on track to not go back to, well.
And I like hearing that too, because I think from the outside, it could be easy to say like, oh, look at them. They went and they built this dream house downtown and everything, I could never do that. I would have doubts. You do have all those things, all of the things that we, I'm quoting air quotes here, we think that you don't deal with. We all deal with it. We all deal with the same stuff, the same questions. So I like hearing that you're doing this and you love it and you're so happy that you did it. And there were questions.
And there still are. There are still concerns. And I don't know if that would be true of anywhere. Mm-hmm. My concerns and fears are certainly different than somebody who lives in a, suburban cul-de-sac. But I know that those parents still have concerns and fears too.
And the balance is different. Balance is not being able to walk out your door and see this great city and have access to so many beautiful businesses. And there's a trade-off, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially Nick, like he's been in his car, I think 3 times in the month that we've lived here. So he's like on cloud 9. It's just like totally, he's like blissed out from it all. And it's great for us too, because I am home with my girls, every day, almost all the time. And so now it's like, you know how it is when your kids are young, like loading them up in the car, do you have the whole bag packed with snacks and diapers and changes of clothes and the stroller, and good Lord, it's like you're vacationing when you leave the house. And now I feel like I put like one diaper in my bag and a bottle of water and off we go in the stroller that's just like out on our back patio. So like stuff like that is really great. And, Ren obviously a baby, but Ruthie's still so young. So like she really is oblivious to a lot of things that are right in front of her face. Now granted, like she is aware of homelessness. And we've talked about that. But like we haven't touched yet, and I'm not going to, just because I don't think it's appropriate, like, drugs and crime and stuff like that. And those were my concerns, and those are still my concerns. Like, is this where we want to raise our kids? But I also think, we live in a really, really diverse neighborhood of race, of class, of culture. And for me and Nick, that was a huge, huge appeal for raising a family here, was just, opening our kids' eyes to this greater worldview.
Yeah. I like how you're saying that I acknowledge that I need to have these conversations with my children eventually, and I want to. That's part of why we're here, but I'm still going to keep it age appropriate, and I'm not going to just open her, pull back the curtain, on Oz. Look,
I know.
Here's
exactly.
life, kind of saving that innocence until it's an appropriate time.
And I think, and so far, and granted, we've been here a month, but we were here constantly, like checking on our house and just like Ruthie really like knew the neighborhood pretty well before we moved in. So we've been here a lot, even though we've only actually been living here for a short time. I waited for her to ask questions too, just to kind of see where her little mind was and what she was thinking. And we started the homelessness conversation because she actually observed it and asked, what those people were doing and that kind of thing. And so, so I don't know. That's kind of, for me, I've just been thinking a lot about like, how will we navigate this? Like there's such a balance of being honest with them, but also wanting to protect a lot of their innocence and wanting to keep them a little bit sheltered.
We've heard how mothering was different than you thought it would be, and you talked about some of the struggles that you've had in mothering. So I'm curious, what do you feel like just comes naturally to you in being a mom? I think I'm patient, and I think that's helped me. I mean, I was a preschool and kindergarten teacher for, almost 10 years. So I think patience when you're with kids is there's, a group of preschoolers is huge. And I think that that's kind of crossed over into the way that I mother. And I'm also almost to a fault, really, really empathetic. And I think, when my kid, it's really, it almost is to a fault because like when they're hurting, even over something so silly, to them, it's the hugest deal in the world, just their cries. Just breaks my heart. And so I'm not a tough, hard parent at all. I mean, with that said, Ruthie definitely has boundaries and she definitely sits on the step often. Yeah. I think a lot of moms can relate with that, just being very empathetic, that their pain literally is your pain as well. Yeah. And
I read a quote, I can't remember who it's by. I'm sure one of your listeners might know it, but it's, you're only as happy as your child's worst day. And I just think like, oh my God, that's so true. Like if your child is sad, it's impossible to be happy.
And I think, bringing that back around to what the show even exists for, like there is soul work in that. There is work in how do I handle someone else's pain with my pain? How do I handle my own sovereignty while my child is sad or in pain, and like that balance of connecting with them and also and empathizing and still feeling like okay yourself. How do you feel overall that you've had to grow since becoming a mother?
I think that it is shocking initially that you are needed 24 hours a day. And especially for me having our second, I remember when I was still kind of in the throes of like just the trenches of it being so hard, those first 6 months, saying to Nick, I just wish somebody didn't need me for 1 second. And I remember that like our dog was crying because he needed water. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so I think, and then, and everybody probably would say the same thing too, where you would never not tend to your child's needs, but it is a little bit hard when it's just around the clock when your kids are young. You know what I mean? And so I think I've had to, I don't think I was a selfish person before having kids by any means, but I think I've had to like really grow up and say like, this is the season that I'm in right now. They need me. And if I am what they need right now, then I'm happy to be that.
And to remember that it is just a season, that saying of the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah.
When you're in it, it feels like it will never end. And if someone even says, oh, this will be over in 2 years, you're like, 2 years? I don't even know if I can handle 2 more days of this. Are you kidding me? And then you turn around and you're like going on college visits with your girls and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What happened? So yeah, I like that phrasing of like, this is the season, just a season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I've been able to, granted, I've only been mothering for 3.5 years. It's not like I have any answers. But I think I've been able to see a little bit of like how quickly they change and how much their routines even change. And so I know, the example right now for us is just how Ren is sleeping. I know that it won't be like this forever. And so because Ruthie has gone through so many different things in her short 3.5 years already. So I think that really does help to just continuously tell myself, this is just for right now. This is just the season. This isn't forever. And it helps you get through your days.
What are the things that you can't live without? I have a feeling coffee might be on your list.
Yes.
But are there any like books that you've read that you loved, or podcasts that you listen to, or blogs that you read? Like what really lifts you up?
I'm a huge coffee. Yes, for sure. We built a coffee bar into our house just so everybody knows. Yeah. I love Instagram for the community that I have found there. Now I know that there are like terrible things about Instagram and you can get caught in like these crazy rabbit holes of just like, what in the world is all this nonsense? But I have found so many wonderful, uplifting, real other mothers on there. And I feel like there are certain accounts where I'm like, I need to just read some of her words right now because I'm feeling like this day is so hard. And then it just is one of those things where it helps to be like, see, they're having a hard, like we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And I feel like, social media can be terrible and amazing, but it does kind of provide a sense of community when you're stuck in your house and you're not actually in real community with your friends or whoever, it's just like it's a great little escape, I think. So yes, coffee, uplifting Instagram accounts. But with that said, you do have to be mindful because I know I can just like continue. I'll check it and be like, I just checked it 5 minutes ago. Like put your phone away. So you do have to be mindful so that you're just not constantly on it.
Yeah, just keeping it in check. And I think social media gets a bad rap, and I do understand why. And it definitely is such a time and energy and attention suck. But it is so beautiful too. Like the connections, like you and I met through social media in kind of a backwards way, but that is how we met. And maybe what we can do is you can send me a couple Instagram accounts that you love, and we'll link to those in the show notes.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Cool. And so you said you have a soul work action step that you have been recently putting into practice yourself, and I'd love to hear what that is. So
when Michelle asked me, when you asked me, to kind of just like think on this question, I didn't realize at the time that I was like asking somebody to ask me this question because I had been thinking about it kind of subconsciously because I knew that I needed some time for me away from my house and away from my children. I think, often women feel guilty saying that, but it's just healthy for me personally to be away from them for an hour or two a week. So for me, it was like, I really need to find something outside of my house that is just for me. And there happens to be a yoga, and that might sound so cliche, but there happens to be a yoga studio just down the street from me. And I started practicing yoga, and it's just been like a really refreshing hour and a half, a couple nights a week. And it's just, I don't know, it just has helped me feel more energized when I come back home to them. So the action step is, if you feel like you are in a similar place where you need to be more mindful of taking care of yourself, my suggestion would be to find something that's just for you.
Maybe outside of the house too.
Outside of the house. Yeah. Because for me, it was like this funny, I had like talked about this a little bit on social media, on Instagram, and people have said like, I like to just go up to my room with a glass of wine and read a book. Now I like to do that too, but I can still hear my children and they know that I'm up there. So they're just, it's not like I don't feel energized at all by it or relaxed. Yeah. So for me, and I really actually wanted to get into rock climbing. Never done it, but I just thought like, I want to do something physical for me. So yoga, and then next up is rock climbing, but I think just leaving my house once, maybe twice a week is really going to be helpful. And I would encourage anybody to try it as well.
Gosh, I remember even, I would do that where it's like, oh, I'm just going to go in the other room. And this is when I was still nursing, and I would hear the baby doing something, and my milk would come in, right?
Oh,
because I just would like hear the baby, and I was like, this is not working. And my husband and I, we trade. He goes out on Monday nights and I go out on Wednesday nights, and those are just our set nights. And like, I think that really does a lot. I look forward to my Wednesday nights, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Lindsay Dewald, I have one last question for you. And it is, what is the one thing that you want all mothers to know?
We really are all in this together. And no matter what it looks like from the outside, nobody has it together. Everybody's going through the same struggles that you are in some way. You know, it might not be the exact same struggle, but everybody has days where we break down in tears. Our house is a mess. We, fight with our spouse. We yell at our kids. We are all human, and we are all, I think, just doing the best we can to raise good people. So I think I would just say, hold tight to that idea that, if you're doing your best and you're loving your kids, who cares what your house looks like? Who cares, about any of it? As long as your kids are loved, it's fine that you have days where it's hard and where you break down. You know what I mean?
Beautiful. Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for taking the time to be on the show. I really, really appreciate having you. And it was just a joy talking with you.
Thanks, Michelle. It was a joy talking to you.
You can find Lindsay on Instagram at Our City House, or on her blog at ourcityhouse.blogspot.com. And also be sure to check out her business, The City Flea, at thecityflea.com. If you're listening to this at the time of original release, there's one City Flea event left this year, and that's the Winter Holiday Market on December 17th from 5 to 10 p.m. at Washington Park in Cincinnati, Ohio. Go to soulworkformoms.com to get links to everything I just mentioned, including the free soul worksheet from today's episode. And that was the final episode of 2016. I'll be spending the next few weeks putting up the Christmas tree, building gingerbread houses, and we're even going to try to take the kids Christmas caroling during the break, so wish us luck there. You can catch up with me on Instagram at Soul Work for Moms, or chat with me about mothering in the Soul Work for Moms Facebook group, which can easily be found by going to soulworkformoms.com/community. And a shout out to all of the recently added members: Amy, Ashley, Carrie, Kathy, Diana, Emily, Erica, Caitlin, Leslie, Maggie, Mary, May, Mara, Melissa, Natalie, and Susan. And of course, a thank you to everyone listening. And as always, thank you for what you do as a mother and your willingness to grow, because when you heal your wounds, you heal the world, and that is evolution through mothering. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk with you next time.